Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Gonzalez, and this is TDI. So today we're going to be talking about flood insurance, why it's important, who's it for. And joining us is Gilbert Hudon from FEMA's Region 6. He's our flood insurance specialist. How are you doing today, Gilbert?
I'm doing outstanding. And yourself, sir?
Very well, thank you. So here at TDI, we're always trying to make it clear that flood insurance is not usually part of a standard homeowner's insurance. Tell us again, why is flood insurance so important to everyone?
Well, flood insurance is very important because it's a single peril policy, meaning that it covers you for flooding events. As you just mentioned, most homeowner policies will not cover flooding events. So if there is a flood event that happens in your area and you do experience flooding in your home, it can be anywhere from an inch, which can cause up to $25,000, or several feet, up to over $100,000 in damage. If you do not have flood insurance, disaster assistance, if that is available, would only cover $5,000 to $6,000, maybe $9,000 at the most, leaving the homeowner having to come up with the rest of the money to repair that home. It's very vital to protect your assets.
So that's an important point there, that some people think about FEMA coming into an area and providing assistance. That's just to get you into a hotel room and maybe pay for your food for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, yes. Think about the essentials for just staying alive. FEMA will come.
Yeah.
Disaster assistance can be used to help rehabilitate some portion of your home to make it habitable, but on average, we have seen disaster assistance grants only between $7,000 to $9,000, depending on the severity of the events. So, as you can see, the average, and I'm going to use a claim, some statistics from Hurricane Harvey. The average flood insurance payout for Hurricane Harvey was $116,000. The average individual assistance, if I remember this correctly, was a little bit over $7,000. Huge difference in numbers. You'll be able to get a good start on repairing your home and getting back into your way of life with a claim of $116,000 as opposed to only covering $7,000 with the damage and trying to figure out how you're going to rebuild the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're talking about wiping out your savings and really changing your whole outlook for a long time. So who needs flood insurance? Is it only for people that are living in floodplains, or who do you recommend gets flood insurance?
That's a great question. And I often tell groups where I speak, the entire country is a floodplain. You just live in different risks. We have areas of minimal flooding that we call our X zones, where we don't anticipate a lot of flooding. And we have our higher risk areas where we do anticipate a lot of flooding. Well, however, over the years, those high risk zones have been regulated to a point where we're not seeing as much damage in those areas as we are areas that are X zones and don't have the regulatory requirements to build on elevated structure or elevated platforms, etc. So that's really a tough question, because by law, a regulatory special flood hazard area, if you reside in it and you have a federally backed mortgage, you're required to have what's called mandatory purchase of flood insurance. But if you're in the X zone, that's not required. But when we're starting to see 40, 50, 60% of houses outside of floodplains flood, I would recommend everyone have a policy. Now, the benefit of that is if you are in a X zone, assuming you meet the eligibility criteria, you could be eligible for what's called the preferred risk policy, which is our cheapest policy out there. It combines both your structure and your content into one policy that, depending on the variables of your house, could be about $650 or less for an entire year of coverage.
Wow, that's a good deal for a lot of folks to consider. When we talk about, I think a lot of people still think about those floodplains, but you're telling me that outside the floodplain, it's really not that it's completely risk-free or lower risk. It just may be an unknown risk at this time.
You're absolutely right. When you look at FEMA maps, you will never find a place that says no flood plain.
Right.
You'll find on the maps where it says X zones is area of minimal flooding, not no flooding at all. That'd be impossible to determine. So the areas of minimal flooding are, based on our modeling, our maps, are where water is not supposed to be. But with the amount of rainfall that happens lately, 52 inches for Harvey, 46 for Imelda, it's a lot of unprecedented water coming from other sources besides the riverine locations or the surge coming in. So being protected is the only sure way of being able to recover from these flooding events.
And I guess a lot of it is based on historical data, and we know that things change, and a development down the street can make a big difference in what happens in your neighborhood.
You're absolutely right. I like to tell my audience that our maps are nothing but a snapshot of time. And at that time, you have the most accurate picture of what we could determine that was on the ground. Now, after that snapshot of time, the development is going to make that actually less accurate over the years. And finally, it's going to get to a point where there's so much development has taken place that it's no longer accurate at all, and new maps are going to have to be developed. So keep that in mind. And, I have people who call my office, say, hey, I've lived in this house 30 odd years. I've never seen water. I can understand that. You may not have had a 1% event in that area. Or people are calling me say, hey, I've lived in this area for 15 years and now I'm mapped into a floodplain. I understand when you bought that house and you had it built, all that development around you has taken a toll on the area. And now there's special flood hazard area that unfortunately has incorporated your home. So a lot of people have to remember that our maps will change over time. And if you buy a house that's close to a floodplain that's not in, there's a good chance in the future the floodplain could expand and incorporate your house into that new map.
Right. And I guess they wouldn't be happy about that, but it's also important to know about that as you're going forward. So flooding can happen really anywhere in Texas. Are there areas of the state, though, that it happens more often? There are some areas of special concern?
Well, as always, the coast is of a great concern for us.
Sure.
So hurricane just starting. A hurricane, the coast is very important because not only do we have the surge and velocity that come in from the Gulf, but we also have high winds. So we have to take both those perils in consideration on the coast. But we also have flash flood alley in Texas. So if you take a look at the state of Texas northwest, it's a swath that comes down to the northeast, comes down to the southwest. And it encompasses Harris County and some of the jurisdictions around there, large built-up areas. Flash flooding can happen at any time during those areas. We also experience in the northern part tornadoes that often include flooding as well. Those areas in particular should be well versed in flood plain management, understand the risks of flooding that the flooding peril can have on homes in that area.
Yeah, and some of our materials that we've produced in the past, we've said, the biggest cities in Texas, the most populous cities in Texas, are either in that flood swath or along the coast. And so anywhere it's populated, those are particularly dangerously prone to flooding.
Yes, it is. Not to mention the recent increases in rainfall. I won't say recent. It's been happily accumulating over the years. In areas not known to see flooding from marine forest sources, we're now starting to see a great impact on the amount of water that just falls from the sky when these rainy events drop 30, 40 inches. That in itself can create what we call a 1% annual event from the rainfall alone.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how people get this and the cost of it. Where do I go about looking for flood insurance?
Okay, your best source is to hop online and do a search for flood insurance providers. There's many out there, and the National Flood Insurance Program works with over 63 different carriers to provide flood insurance products to our customers. Do your search for someone local. Now, they are all based on FEMA criteria, so they should be close in range, but I like to encourage people to call to get at least 2 quotes to ensure that the correct information is being input into the application. Not that the price would be different, just to ensure that the information is correct. By contacting your local licensed agent is the best way to go. It's impossible to really gauge the price of a flood insurance policy because each house has so many different variables. It's like comparing oranges when you want to look at your neighbor's house. You have to take in the variables of your lowest floor elevation against the base flood elevation against the year of construction, flood loss history. Is it eligible for some type of subsidy or grandfathering? All those are taken into consideration when you fill out the application. So that is truly not only the best, but really the only way to determine how much flood insurance is going to cost for you.
And can I go to somebody, like if I'm already have an agent that covers my house and my car, can I ask them of where to go, or can they point me to someone?
Definitely. I would encourage them to start with their current insurance provider, either homeowners or auto, and see what they can do. They may not write it directly, but they may have an agreement with some other organization that can write flood insurance.
Okay, sounds good. And then we know that with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have to adjust things for a lot of different aspects of our lives. Is FEMA helping folks that may have some financial trouble right now paying premiums, or they already had policies? And there was some talk of grace periods early on. Is that still going on?
Yes, it actually expires June 15th. What it was is
Okay.
you had a 120-day grace period, a 4-month grace period in which premiums did not have to be paid. And this was in response, direct response to COVID-19 and the potential financial impact it may have had on our customers, our insured. So in essence, if your policy was due during that 120-day time period after your policy was set to expire, your policy stayed current. In the National Flood Insurance Program, we have what's called continuous coverage, and it's a big thing for a lot of our insurers. If it's broken, you may lose benefits such as grandfathering or subsidies. So this 120-day extension guarantees that there is no break in coverage and that the insured maintains coverage during that time frame. It is set to expire June 15th, and I have not heard any word about an additional extension, but as we get closer, we may find out. But if something, for example, if something were to happen right now, flooding event come in, as long as they can pay that flood insurance premium, they will still be covered. They'll still be able to apply a claim.
Okay, so nobody got cut off because they missed a payment during this time frame.
No, we ensure that they maintain coverage, and we understand completely the financial impact this event is having on all of our insured across the country. So this 4-month grace period has been very well received. So hopefully a lot of people will be able to cover by the 15th time frame, and we'll hopefully get on to a normal way of life.
Yeah, we could all use that. Well, thanks for joining us today, Gilbert. If people want to learn more about flood and flood insurance, where should they go?
Floodsmart.gov is a great source of information when it comes to not only the National Flood Insurance Program, but also about flood insurance. There is a engine on there that you can find our WIO partners, right your own partners who sell flood insurance by zip code. It also gives you a lot of information on the flood zones, information you may want on map changes, and just a lot of great information in general that homeowners should be aware of, especially if they do reside currently in a special flood hazard area.
Okay, so you can check out your risk, and you can also learn how to get covered there. That sounds good. Well, you can also visit our website at tdi.texas.gov, and you can learn all about different kinds of insurance there, as well as some information about flood. And you can also call our helpline if you have specific questions. That's 1-800-252-3439. For Gilbert Huron, I'm Ben Gonzalez. This is TDI.